dogma lesson, just not bothering to plan? That's a question for TEFLologists. When I read this book, is it better to skim or scan? That's a question for TEFLologists. Can you be a good teacher if you have a CELTA? Or should you invest in an MA or a Delta? From politics to methodology, we'll discuss them all on TEFLology.
Welcome back to TEFLology, a podcast all about teaching English as a foreign language and related matters.
Today's episode is guest hosted by Anna Loseva and Michael Griffin. Both Anna and Michael are prolific ELT bloggers and both have highly regarded blogs. Michael currently teaches in South Korea and is a part-time lecturer at the New School, while Anna is a teacher here in Japan. The pair are also affiliated with the International Teacher Development Institute, or ITDI.
We recorded the two in discussion about a variety of topics at the EFL Teacher Journeys conference last month in Tokyo, and we thought a nice place to start the conversation would be about their journeys, both as teachers and online.
So, journeys. You were talking today about your journey, right?
Yeah, exactly. 45 minutes I was talking about my journey.
Which is what?
Well, I said that for 5 years. No, that's not even true. For 4 years. It has been a digital journey, like more of a digital nature. A journey that has led to some real big drastic change in real life. Coming to Twitter and Facebook, ITDI, PLN, blogging has eventually, meeting people online and digital connections transferred into the real world. And here I am in Japan, in Tokyo, working.
So many acronyms there.
So many things.
What's ITDI?
ITDI is an international Teacher Development Institute. Have you heard about it before?
I have actually. I was just telling someone about it because on my name card it says ITDI, and I had to explain. No, I don't work there. I just support it.
All right. I always struggle with explaining like what actually I do there because I feel guilty for not doing enough. Like I helped write the course, English for Teachers, and I used to blog more. No, I don't have the time, unfortunately. I would love to do something else for the community because it's a wonderful association connecting teachers all over the world.
Just 5 minutes ago I was saying, well, I don't work there and it's online. No, it's not in Tokyo. Actually, I work in Korea. I live in Korea. And that was a little bit confusing. What are you doing in Japan? Did you come here just for this conference? Well, kind of.
I guess your journey is a lot more to say because you've been speaking for 2 hours.
Okay. I started teaching 15 years ago. I think it's pretty typical, talk a lot of things that I heard today. Sort of fell into it, wasn't really planning on staying in the field that long. I decided, my original plan was to go to 5 countries in 5 years. And I went to South Korea first, which was an easy place to get a job with no experience and background and stuff. And then, so my plan was 5 countries in 5 years, and then I stayed in Korea for 2.5. Then I traveled for 1, and then I was in Japan, back in Korea now. So my journey was, again, I don't like the term backpacker, as we saw in the plenary. I just don't really like that term, but I guess that's what I was. I mean, I still have a backpack. I had a backpack, but I kind of transformed or went into this journey of taking it a little more seriously, or making a career of it. So my journey, I'm not sure it's so interesting or unique or anything.
The pair also discussed blogging and whether they blogged for themselves or blogged for others.
Talking about blogging is so exciting.
Yeah?
Yeah, and because when I started blogging, I had 3 blogs. I mean, the blog that I have right now is the 3rd version that I've finally come to like, I think. And the first time I started blogging, I didn't really know. I mean, English blogging connected with teaching. I used to have a Russian blog where I would just explore what it is to blog. And unfortunately, I deleted it. I would love to see what I wrote 10 years ago. And so for the first blog that I started, had just like 3 posts, but somehow I remember that I was inspired by Twitter teachers I met on Twitter, and I read their blogs. At that time it was Brett Patterson, I remember, and Cecilia Lamas from Brazil, and those teachers who do not really appear a lot in nowadays blogging situation, but at that time in 2011 they inspired me so much, and I created a blog. And then my first post was, well, thank you everybody, I'm here. You have inspired me. That was it. I didn't really know what to blog about. But then I wrote a post about something I did in class, which actually I think now was not really interesting, but I got a lot of responses from those teachers I knew on Twitter. I did not, at that point, take any active participation in professional development on Twitter, on Facebook, but I got responses from other teachers. That was interesting. And then there was maybe one more post, and then I started feeling so not encouraged to write, because I thought I'm not contributing. My ideas are not really worth much. and that was it, like, for a while.
But then you started blogging all over, not just on your blog, but...
Yeah, blogging for ITTI, this chance that I was given, that was really great and useful for me because of a deadline. You were given a deadline and a topic to think about. I mean, you choose whether to take the topic or not. That was very useful for me, like to get into the practice of writing. And
we talked before, a while back, about the idea of blogging on your own blog versus blogging elsewhere on someone else's blog.
Yeah, and that was your good quote. Can you remember it?
Nope.
Like, your blog is your home.
So it's okay to be a little messier,
right.
If you want.
To care not so much about how you organize things and such. Because now I blog for 3 different spaces. For teaching English, as an associate at Teaching English, and ITDI, my own blog. And whenever I write for those 3 spaces, it feels different every time. And I feel different expectations of myself and of my kind of writing. They're so different every time. And so I need to use a different framework.
I need to not swear on other blogs.
All right.
So the question was blogging for yourself, for your own professional development, or blogging for an audience, or blogging for an audience, or blogging for other reasons. What do you think about that?
What I blog for?
Sure.
Just for myself. Because I have something, I have thoughts. I don't have many people to talk to, I mean in real life, about these thoughts, to talk about this. And then it's just easier, you get it out in the form of a blog post, and you get responses as comments, or it's comments on blogs, or on Facebook, or on Twitter, anywhere, like everywhere. That's why I share my blog posts everywhere around.
So you find it useful for your professional development?
Definitely, I do. How about you?
Nice forced question. I'm not so sure how useful it is for my own professional development as a teacher. I'm not so convinced of that. I think it's useful for my thinking about teaching. I think it's useful for my writing. I think it's useful to share my ideas for the fun of it, or to get people thinking, or to think on my own. But for my actual classroom practice, I'm not convinced.
You mean you're blogging yourself?
Yeah, my own blogging, I'm not sure that it's that useful for my own teaching.
I see.
Which is very specific lines to make.
Yeah, I think a very distinctive feature of your blog is interview blog posts. How do you feel about them? We talked before also that I think you do those interviews for the sake of community.
For the community.
Yeah, for the community.
Yeah, I guess that's part of it. It's also kind of fun, and it's also, I like to kind of recognize someone that I think is doing interesting things or doing something different, and lead 10 people to their blog or something like that.
Not 10.
A few, not a lot. So that's kind of another. I guess that's more for fun, or as recognition, or something like that.
I guess that's very different among the blogs that we could be reading as English language teachers. It's a very specific feature of your blog. Very nice.
Well, thank you.
And also, because I tried to do that myself, copying your style. I'm sorry, but it was a failure, I think. I mean, the guest blog post that I did with Naoko was actually a bit difficult for me. We did the interview in actually sitting together in the room, and I was writing the questions, and at the same time she wrote an answer. So it took 2 real hours sitting together and writing that, and I could react. So my next question was related to her response, and that is the way I can do the interview. But I don't know how you do the interviews, by the way.
I do it kind of piece. That was no secret. I do it piece by piece, like ask a couple questions and then see how the answers go, and then I do it usually on Google Docs and just make a document and then fill in some questions and kind of give people a chance. If they don't want to answer a question, I'm pretty happy to skip it or something like that. And then, but I try and make it flow so it reads like it was all done at one time, but it wasn't. That's my secret.
Right. At work, I have this colleague whose name is Buddy, and he sits across from me. But, well, we had a free time at some point at work, didn't have anything to do. And I was, like, having this moment of enthusiasm. I want to do, and I said, at some point, I want to do interviews for my blog with the 3 of my colleagues. And so we had that time, and he said, well, let's do it now. Do you know Google Docs? Yes. And so we're sitting next to each other, and I typed a question, he typed an answer straight away. So it's pretty much the same way I did with Naoko, but just typing in the document. But it's still there in the drafts, in the docs, because I need to edit, I need to add something else.
That's your story.
That's my story.
Next, Anna and Michael discuss the importance of being connected teachers.
You are very connected. You have a lot more to say than me.
I have less Twitter followers than you.
That is a fact. It's true. But somehow you manage your followers better than I do.
I'm not sure. It's not a competition. So the importance of being a connected teacher, for me, it's kind of weird because I feel like still, after it's been 4 years now, 3.5 years, I still feel kind of new to it, or like I fell into it, or I'm not a real believer in the rah-rah, like PLN is wonderful, PLN is the way and the only way and the path kind of thing. So I still feel a little bit like an imposter or a newcomer or some combination of those.
But you do have a social media empire.
A social media empire. No comment.
I guess it's really hard. I've been talking about social aspect of being a teacher, like getting it social online at conferences, just because what I speak at conferences is what I know, and this is what I know. And so I was trying to, with different levels of enthusiasm and through different angles, to make people understand that this is a thing that could probably lead to connections, just to get him, not necessarily jobs in Japan, but just connections and friends and new ideas, and even websites with worksheets or activities like Flashmob BLT, other things. But you never really know what other people need.
Yeah, I always, or lately, or sometimes, or often, or something, feel like being a missionary of this online world is not a really comfortable role.
Right.
So I've blogged about it 5 times, talked about it a few times, and I feel like, all right, if people, it's 2015, if people aren't doing it yet, maybe that's fine.
And also some people just don't know that it's happening. But even, well, I shared this with my colleagues back home in Russia, and some people get excited and try and take this lurker role. Some people get more and more. It depends on character, I guess, and so many different factors. So there's no just one right way to do it. People who have gained something from this participation and online connection, they would know that this is a thing. They would agree. But otherwise, I don't think that it's a thing that is necessary for all teachers to do.
I've got a friend, he sent me a message on Facebook, my good friend of many years. He sent me a message on Facebook last night saying like, oh, I really need to get on Twitter. I really should do more. I really should do more. I need to do this. And I'm feeling like, well, really? Do you need to? Or like, what do you see as the benefits, or why do you feel this pressure? Because I don't know. I'm not sure that it is for everyone, or I'm not sure that he needs to feel that pressure.
True.
I mean, I've been very happy and it's been great, but maybe that's just me because I'm online all the time.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of time. Not just time. I think that it takes a lot of like mental power and the energy to be participating.
I remember when I first got on Twitter, I asked like, "Hey everybody, what's the one ELT book you'd have if you're stranded on a desert island?" Which is a ridiculous question because you don't need to study anymore because there's no students. And I got no answer, and I was like crushed.
Oh wow.
You know, nobody's responding. I'm asking stupid questions, or nobody cares, or blah blah blah. But then, you know, there could be any number of factors why I didn't get an answer. The question wasn't quite clear enough, or people were busy that day, or they'd already answered it 5 times. You know, hundreds of answers. So I think it's a little bit matter of.
I might have just missed that question.
Okay.
I would have answered.
What would be your answer?
It would be Teaching Unplugged.
That's a good plug.
Anna and Michael both reflected on their successes in the classroom and online.
My breakthrough moment on this whole online stuff and social media and presence and everything was in Cambodia. I got on a bus for a tour at the TESOL conference, and Tim Knight, who's based here in Tokyo, says, "Are you Mike?" And I didn't know who he was necessarily from. I knew his Twitter handle, but I didn't know the face attached to the name, and I was like, wow, this social media stuff is real. This is a real thing, and people do know this kind of nonsense that I'm spouting, or do know whatever. So for me, that was like a breakthrough there. Teaching breakthrough, which is a totally different question. In 2008, I was doing my MA, and I was in the middle of class, and I was like, what the hell? There's some swearing. Not quite Jeff Jordan, but I was like, what the hell am I doing? And I actually needed to sit down and just kind of think like, what are the decisions that I'm making here? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this like this? And I was like, oh, that's like, I've been teaching for 8 years now, 8 years, and I had never really considered on a really deep level, why am I making the choices? So if I were to answer a breakthrough as a teacher, that moment was like intense. Just let students keep doing what they were doing while I had to sit down and sort out this labyrinth of decisions that were happening. What about you, Anna? Online or teaching?
This is actually a very difficult question, but I think I would say, I think that very recently in my Asian trip in 2014 in the fall, the fact that the connections I had made online with teachers in Korea and Japan, and that actually made me feel so comfortable and at home here in this part of the world, and go to their classrooms and spend the days and hang out with Gisette in her house and just totally changed my life, I would say. Just totally changed my life. And in my case, I would say that I don't really distinguish, I don't really make a big difference between my life and teaching. It's all one thing, which I constantly blog about. And like, this is the way my blog has developed. This is what it has developed into.
The conversation then turned to recommended blogs.
I think Rose Bard has been on fire lately.
Really?
Her blog is excellent. Highly recommended. Kevin Stein in Osaka, The Other Things Matter, is a blog I would recommend. Jeff Jordan has already been mentioned here. I would definitely strongly recommend his. I was talking earlier about Russell Main's blog, which is EBFL, evidence-based EFL. Those are just a couple off the top of my head.
I would like to say, but I said, I don't have time for reading the blogs, but of course. I would mention Hanna Ticha's blog, a teacher from the Czech Republic. One of those teachers on fire.
She's prolific. That's the right word.
Yeah, that's the right word. And also I'm thinking, of course, ITDI blog every 2 weeks. And also I'm thinking of Russian teacher, because when back home, I was really interested in if there are any other Russian teachers blogging about teaching in English. And first I thought that there was nobody, but then I have started to compile a list, and now I know that there are teachers and posting very interesting things. So I don't remember the name of the blog, but I'll send the link. This is Oля Sergeyeva and Kate Spring Kate on Twitter. I'm learning teaching, I guess. This is new, fresh, and interesting, and Russian.
Finally, the two made some suggestions for teachers who are thinking of becoming more active online.
I think my advice would be don't be afraid to be yourself. Crack a silly joke, share a picture of food, even though that's frowned upon. Really show yourself, and rather than just being strictly professional all the time.
True.
One thing I've read people complain about on Twitter a lot lately is, there used to be conversations, but there aren't anymore. So my advice would be maybe get involved with conversations. Don't be afraid to butt in and just share your opinion in a short term, in a short block of characters. I'm pretty sure that's not really like earth-shattering advice, but don't be afraid to be yourself and don't be afraid to butt in. Those would be my pieces of advice, I guess.
I don't tweet much anyway, so I need to follow your advice to butt in, because I don't do that lately.
Why not? Why don't you tweet much these days?
Question. I don't know. I share my blog post, but otherwise I don't have this habit of scrolling down my feed, and I don't know why. And I cannot say I'm one of those people who have it, who use it, but I don't feel like it's a big part of my life. I cannot say that Twitter is a big part of my professional life. I go there. When I go there, I know that I'll find something. When people mention me, I get those notifications of those mentions, and I don't know. Blogging on Facebook, I guess, is more my thing. Maybe it's more visual. Oh, there are maybe Facebook people and Twitter people. Like Vicky Loris, for example, right? She used to be so prolific on Twitter, and now she's more on Facebook. Also, there are teachers on Instagram.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. And they actually share professional posts on Instagram. And so this is very interesting. The world is developing. And I'm there, and Vicky's there, and Hannah is there. Joined recently.
What kind of things are they sharing?
Well, they kind of mix their lives in pretty much my style. I mean, things happening in their life, so that you can see who the teacher actually is, where they live, the school they go to, how they spend their free time and such. And also they share like the books they read, how everything that affects their teaching in a very natural way of just sharing photos. This is an interesting world. I recommend you to go on Instagram and look for the teachers who come from your Facebook network. We are there.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode with guest presenters Anna Loseva and Michael Griffin.
We'd also like to thank Mike Ellis and everybody at the JALT Teacher Education and Development SIG for kindly letting us record this episode at the EFL Teacher Journeys Conference, which they organised. More information about Anna and Michael's blogs, the TED SIG, and the EFL Teacher Journeys Conference can be found in the description of this podcast. So we'll be back with the regular episode soon.